How can you get the most powerful evidence and message and quickly to have the most healing impact possible on your sitter? In this video, I'm sharing the 5 most important things I do to make my readings as efficient as possible so that they're chock full of moving moments that provide my sitters with the experience they deserve. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell too. That way you'll be notified each time I release a new video about all things mediumship. You can see recordings of my readings so you can catch me in action. I share spiritual how-tos, meditations, and so much more. After giving many readings and receiving many readings, it's clear that there are simple changes you can make as a medium to get the best and most impactful evidence and message, and quickly. While there are always times that it might take you a minute to try to figure out what spirit is trying to convey, you'll realize over time that you can structure and organize the way you read to give your sitter a clean and incredible experience. Number 1, before you begin, make sure that your sitter understands the process of mediumship and how you read, and that they understand to only respond with yes, no, or maybe. I like to explain to my sitter before I begin a little bit about how mediumship works. I never make assumptions that they already know, and even if they do, it's good to hear it again. I also explain how I personally run my readings because every medium is different. This is powerful because it helps everybody relax, it helps empower your sitter, which is very important, and it builds trust. Sitters can accidentally take control of the reading if you or they are not careful and expectations aren't clearly outlined. Perhaps they're talking a lot and revealing lots of information. Maybe they're asking questions and taking you out of your connection with spirit. If you don't know how to let them enjoy the reading and what the expectations are, it can turn into a full-on shit show. Number 2, create a structure for how you read and strongly intend that spirit follow it. I've done this from the very beginning, and spirit is always so great about more or less following the structure of my reading. The first thing you want to do is identify the spirit who is coming through and being channeled. Nothing you share is going to be that impactful or healing if your sitter doesn't understand who this spirit is. So that's the first thing that you want to do. Once you've identified who the spirit is, now it's really powerful to start bringing through evidential information. This is information that can be validated by your sitter about the spirit who is passed. Maybe it's their name, it could be how they passed, how long ago they passed, it could be certain things about their health or their body, it could be hobbies, keepsakes, where they lived, all kinds of things that your sitter will be able to validate. This evidential information creates trust in your sitter that yes, their past loved one is truly there in spirit. After that, I move on to the message. This is why the spirit has chosen to come through. There's always a powerful message. Spirit never wastes a thought. And lastly, this is a good time to tie up loose ends. Sometimes spirit will linger and keep giving me fun or funny pieces of evidence, or they'll give me something that we weren't sure of before another time, and it will make sense afterward when the whole reading has really come together. And it does. Spirit is intelligent. They like to follow this structure with me a lot of the time as well because it's a really powerful way to get the most healing experience for your sitter. Now, it doesn't mean that this order is perfectly followed with every reading. Sometimes I'll get evidence right away that will identify the sitter and is also a part of the message. But however it comes through, more or less, I like it to follow this structure. Now, number 3 is kind of a repeat, but really deserves to stand on its own. While I talked in number 2 about having a structure to your reading, number 3 is remembering to identify the sitter. Now, I know we just spoke about this, but hear me out. I've been in so many classes where I've received readings, and I can tell you that especially new mediums who are coming into their skills commonly make the mistake of bringing through all kinds of evidence without identifying the sitter. It is painful to sit through. Even if you think you know who it is that's coming through, when they're not sure, the reading is not as powerful. I even had a reading once where I was with a lovely human who started telling me they were seeing rainbows, the sun, a butterfly. Now, some of these things sound like they could be signs that spirit has sent, but it's not really evidential information. And more than anything, I don't know who's sending these signs or who is speaking through this medium. So they've been pretty painful readings, and I'm sure if you sat with lots of mediums, you may have had this experience yourself. There's nothing more important than first identifying who is this who is coming through and how are they connected to the sitter. Now, one thing I do to make sure that I identify the spirit is remember that power of intention I've spoken about in many of my videos. Set the intention that you will bring through a recognizable loved one or loved ones of your sitter. This is powerful and it works. Even if you don't know exactly how this spirit is connected to your sitter, you can bring through enough information that your sitter can be confident in who this is. There are so many ways you can identify the sitter. Play with all of your different clairs, exercise them regularly so that you never miss this very important step. What do you practice in particular that helps your readings be as efficient as possible? Number 4, ask for loads of information or evidence that can be validated by your sitter. I say a prayer before I read, and one of the parts of my prayer is, help me bring through a vast body of indisputable evidence so that my sitter knows that you are here. Why is it so important that the sitter can validate what you're bringing through? Well, first of all, evidential mediumship, in my mind, is crucial. This is an intangible service. So we need the closest thing to proof that we can get to provide the healing nature of mediumship. That's why you need to bring through information that is evidence that can be validated by your sitter, that they can say yes, no, or at least maybe to. What if you're bringing through someone that they never met? Perhaps a grandparent passed before they were born. Even in this situation, there may very well be plenty of evidence that your sitter can validate. For example, things going on currently in their life. It's one of my favorite kinds of evidence when spirit talks about the day-to-day things that are going on in the sitter's life, to know, wow, this medium couldn't have known this. My grandparents must really be near me in spirit. During a reading once, I brought through a great-grandmother that my sitter had never met, but this great-grandmother had me describe a picture of her that was in a metal silver frame with a very particular hairdo and a very big pouting look on her face like this. It was really intense. It was unmistakable that this expression was quite bizarre. And it turns out that even though the sitter never knew her great-great-grandmother, she had that exact picture in that frame with her great-grandmother making this very hilarious expression, and she knew right away who the sitter was and how they were connected to her. And she could validate that even though she didn't know her great-grandmother, she knew that's who was coming through. Sometimes mediums share information that might be powerful, but it can't necessarily be validated. There's nothing worse than someone claiming they're a medium, but almost all their evidence is evidence that can't really be validated. For example, how the spirit felt when they passed over, who welcomed the spirit first when they crossed into heaven or the other side, whatever you want to call it. Or your mom is always sitting in the passenger seat of your car. Now, I will be transparent and tell you that evidence like this, which is not truly evidential, does come through for me sometimes during readings. An example, I often get permission from the past spouse to move on for the living incarnated spouse. I also get that the past spouse sent their living partner a new husband, wife, or partner. But at the same time, the reading is chock full of all kinds of evidence that can be validated by the sitter, like family dynamics that are going on or happened in the past, keepsakes, how they passed, their favorite pets, a name. And when I share information that isn't technically evidential, it doesn't seem to come across out of thin air. It often really resonates with my sitter. For example, when I told my sitter that her deceased husband sent her her new husband, she told me that he made the promise that he would send her a new husband before he passed, and that her new husband also felt that he was a gift from her ex-husband who was deceased. and that the two of them had had this conversation often. If you don't bring through evidential information, there's a good chance that your sitter, especially if they're a skeptic, is going to end up walking away wondering, was my past loved one in spirit even there? Is this real? Instead, you want your client saying, there is no way that you could have known that. I'm completely convinced, like this.
I mean, you really just hit on so many things. I mean, it's like, I believe so much that you connected with my parents. I mean, you hit on so many crazy things. I mean, I'm not even, it's like crazy how you knew nothing about me. And I mean, you hit on so many things.
Number 5, use symbols. Everyone's mediumship is different. So if you haven't had much luck with symbols, don't stress. I have a friend who feels that clairvoyant symbols do not work well for her and her mediumship. But however your mediumship works, it's worth putting in the work to see if you can get symbols to work for you. Symbols are like spirit shorthand. So however you sense them, it's the same for each spirit because it symbolically conveys the same idea in each reading. For example, if I see a cigarette or smell a cigarette, it tends to mean that the person I'm connecting with was a smoker. And symbols don't have to be clairvoyant. You might notice that I said, if I smell it, that is clairalience. And that is when you smell something. For me, it's subjective. So smelling a cigarette or seeing a cigarette, those are both symbols that someone was a smoker. You could also hear the word cigarette, and that would be a clairaudience symbol that somebody was a smoker. So how do you create symbols? My practice is that after I do a reading, I review all of the evidence that came through. And a lot of time evidence comes through for me, even if I don't have a symbol for it. But if it's evidence that I constantly get during readings and I'm getting it in all kinds of different ways and I'd like to streamline that process, it might be that I decide to give spirit a symbol to use. When I first started out in my mediumship, I had a month where divorce was such a huge topic. I had so many sitters whose parents had divorced. It had affected them greatly, and there was a message from spirit about these divorces. Well, I was sensing them in all kinds of ways, and they weren't clear every time. And so I had an image of a stack of papers with a big stamp on it that said divorce. I imagined this in my mind while sitting in meditation and asked spirit, please use this as often as possible when divorce is something that I have to bring up as validation. The very next reading, and since then, I clearly see divorce when someone is divorced or separated or had a rocky marriage, and it helps me streamline the reading and make it much more efficient. And you're always welcome to check out my YouTube video, Sitting in the Power for Clairvoyant Symbols. If you're interested in strengthening your clairs so you can speak to spirit, you can download my free guide below. It's called 3 Easy Exercises to Strengthen Your Clairs and Speak to Spirit. You can also check out mediumshipwithmel.com. Here you can book private readings, group readings. You can check out my development circle if you'd like to learn right along with me, and so much more. Don't forget to check out this video next. And if you like this video, comment, give it a like, share this video with someone you think would benefit. And of course, hit that bell if you want to be notified the next time that I release a new video.